What would you pay? What would you invest into getting a really straightforward plan how to take a law firm from zero to $10 million in about 3 years? Well, how about nothing? Listen to this episode or watch it on YouTube, where Jason Hennessey of Hennessey Digital, a very sizable marketing company that he took in under 10 years from zero to $22 million in revenue. That's quite an accomplishment. Where he breaks down a plan, 5-step plan, how to go from zero to $10 million with a law firm. Listen, learn, and make sure that you take action. Throughout the episode, Jason and I talk about the importance of taking action. Because just learning doesn't equal action, and without action, nothing's going to happen. Enjoy the episode. Hi there. I have a small but really meaningful favor to ask you. I watch at the stats on our YouTube channel and Spotify channel, wherever most people listen and watch our podcast. And I see that over 80% of everybody who listens to it regularly is not a subscriber. I'm asking you to subscribe to this channel. And the reason for that is my mission and the mission of my team is to help as many small law firm owners to learn how to transform their law firms into better businesses, and so they in turn enjoy better lives. When you hit subscribe button, you tell these platforms that this is content worth listening, worth viewing, and they in turn will show it to many other small law firm owners and hopefully help me fulfill our mission of helping them create a better business and enjoy better lives. So would you please do me this favor? It would mean the world to me, and hit the subscribe button. And my promise to you is that I will continue to work hard at creating good content with practical ideas that help you and your teams grow better law firms. Thank you. Welcome to the GLF podcast. I have an amazing guest with me here today, Jason Hennessey of Hennessey Digital and so many other brands. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sasha. I appreciate it, man. I'm honored to be here. I've listened to a couple episodes, and this is, I think, going to be a good one. So thank you.
For sure. Jason, illustrious career in SEO that spans nearly a quarter of a century, running Hennessey Digital for the last 10 years, serving close to 200 law firms, sizable team, very successful. And then you decide to add your personal brand, Jason Hennessey at jasonhennessey.com, with a very mission or purpose-driven idea, rather. Can you talk about that? So we do not focus on marketing, but actually what's really important.
Yeah, sure. So, Hennessey Digital is kind of like the enterprise, I guess, if you will. That's been 10 years. Jason Hennessey is just, it's my personal brand. I basically have built Hennessey Digital, the agency, off of my personal brand. And so I make sure that everything that we do is a clear representation of me personally. And so, I don't ever want to be at a conference where somebody feels like we ripped them off or we screwed somebody over, right? And I could go to most conferences confident knowing that that will never happen, right? And so I feel like you get to a point in life and in business where, once you start climbing a mountain, you end up in a place where there's other people that are kind of looking up at you. And here I am at one part of the mountain, I'm looking up at others as well, right? And so about 5 or 6 years ago, I had a coach that really helped me get to the top of the mountain or where I am a lot faster. And so I want to go and give back myself. And so I put something out. It wasn't even like anything formal. It was just like maybe like a post on like LinkedIn or something saying, hey, going to be offering some coaching services if anybody would like me to personally coach them. If they're somewhere stuck in scaling their business, please be sure to reach out. And so I had a couple people reach out, and then a lot more people reach out. And I quickly filled up like 10 spots. That's all I really wanted. And so from there, it's just been a fun journey. I've been coaching some other smaller law firms that can't afford to hire Hennessey Digital. And I've also been coaching a couple agency owners as well who aspire to be like Hennessey Digital.
Yeah, I love that. Do you also find, and this is a side point, but do you also find that when you teach, when you coach, you actually become better at whatever it is that you're teaching?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I'm just as much as a student as I am a coach, right? So that's also the fun part of this job is because I'm giving them some of the tools and stories and shortcuts of what I did to get somewhere, right? But they're also sharing their journey as well, and we all learn from each other's mistakes, and we all have different mistakes. We also have all have different success, and so I'm just as much as a student as I am a teacher on some of those calls.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
If my memory serves me right, your primary business, Hennessey Digital, and its related brands now has over 300 employees, and you built this just shy of 10 years, give or take. Is that right?
Yeah, we're not 300. I think that might have been on a vision. I created a vivid vision where, I thought that in 5 years we might have 300 employees. We're able to scale and grow. We're probably just about half of that. We probably have about 150 full-time employees now. But our team is great. Our culture is great, and it's attributed to a good leadership team as well. That is underneath me, but really kind of running the show.
Awesome. So about 150 employees, and again, you've done this just shy of 10 years, which is incredible. By the way, I totally read your vision, vivid vision,
Yes.
which did you borrow that from Cameron Harold?
Yeah. Cameron is my business coach.
Oh, he's your business
Um,
coach. Got it.
He's my business
Yeah.
coach. So when I said I had a coach, yeah. So Cameron Harold is my business coach, and a very good friend. And so, yeah, Cameron helped us. I reached out to Cameron when we were at about 5 million in revenue,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
said, Cameron, love to work with you. Please take me to the next level. And so he agreed to work with us, and so he quickly got us not only to 10 million, but now we're 22 million, and he's still our coach.
Good for you. I've met Cameron a couple of times. Great guy. Read both of his books. Love them. By the way, this is
Mm-hmm.
such a common theme across successful people is that everyone, everyone had a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
Just about everyone, once they reach the top of the mountain, still has a coach or advisor or multiple coaches or advisors. My partner and I have two advisors at any given
Mm-hmm.
time. Very different backgrounds, very different thinking. They tell us different things, and then we reconcile it and decide what we're going to do.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
highly useful.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're watching this, listening to this podcast, and you do not have an advisor, but you are looking to grow, you have that insatiable appetite to grow, or you just need to get to the next level for whatever family financial reasons. Like getting a
Yeah.
coach will get you there faster than almost anything else.
It's one of those things that's where we're conditioned to have coaches like our entire life, right? When you join a little league baseball team, you've got a coach. When you wrestle in middle school, right? There's a coach. When you play football in high school, there's a coach. When you are trying to get into college, you might have an SAT prep, right? Course that you take, right? So like all throughout life, you have coaches, right? But then you get to the real world and you want to get into business, right? Guess what? You're on your own, right? Where's the coach, right? So it takes somebody to recognize that, because a lot of those times, like, you don't choose your coach, you're just given a coach, right? Your parents put you on a baseball team, this is your coach, right? So now you're kind of in your own control here, and you have to just be able to recognize it.
Yeah. Their coach is built in. Here you actually have to make a certain financial sacrifice usually to get a
Mm-hmm.
coach, which when things are early, when you're not making a ton of money, it would feel very counterintuitive to start investing money into having a coach.
Mm-hmm.
But that coach may actually generate the highest return on investment. You just have to have faith.
I have a story about that. So the real reason kind of why I even started my coaching program, I guess, if you will, was because somebody referred somebody to me, right? And that's not uncommon. Like, we've built a pretty good reputation in the market. If people learn of somebody that's looking to grow their law firm, they might make an introduction saying, hey, you should talk to Jason, and his agency. Maybe they can help you. So I got referred to somebody, a guy by the name of Dan. I won't mention his last name. And so I'm like, let's jump on a call, right? And so we set up a call. It was like 30 minutes, and I heard him out, and he was telling me all of the things that he wanted to do. He was like a new law firm starting his own PI practice, and he was going to do this and this and this and this. And I'm just like, oh, like, stop. Don't do that. Don't do that. Like, that's okay. Right. And if I would have just like got off that call and let him go on with the plan that he had, it wasn't like he had bad intentions. He just didn't have the years and years of experience, right? And so he was going to go down this rabbit hole and waste a lot of money, right? That wasn't probably going to get him the result that he desired. And so I'm just like, I can't let this guy, go down this path. And so he wasn't in a position to hire Hennessey Digital. So I said, why don't we just do this? Like, let me just we'll meet once a month for an hour, we'll come up with a reasonable rate. And then I'll just kind of give you the best advice on what you should be doing, because he didn't have the money to invest in an agency, but he had a lot of time, right? And he had a lot of desire and a lot of drive. And so since we've been doing that, he's ramped it up and he's growing and growing. And eventually he's going to be at a place where he can easily afford a Hennessey Digital, right? Where instead of trading, dollars, right? Right now he's basically trading time for dollars, but later he can trade dollars for his time, right? But that was basically kind of the genesis of why I even started coaching people, was for the money that they could save by making, the mistakes that he was going to make if he would have just moved forward as is.
Very, very meaningful. I want to
Mm-hmm.
entertain a concept. Let's go to fantasy land for a second, and let's imagine that you and I partner up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about growing. Everybody who watches or listens to this podcast, the only reason why they're here, I think the only reason why they're here, it's not because of my good looks. It's because they actually want to hear practical ideas how to do better with their business that happens to be law firms. Because I deeply believe that better business equals better life. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a hard rule, but you and I would probably agree that operating $1 million business, be it a law firm or a marketing company, is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard. You're not taking a lot of money home. Your hair's on fire. You're doing a million different things. Unless you
Yep.
know how to structurally grow, which most people, when they come from the field of law, like you're a specialist, highly trained specialist in the field of law, not a highly trained specialist in the field of business.
That's right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so people come here and they watch this, they listen to this podcast because they want practical ideas how to grow a law firm.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I decide to partner up. We go to the state of Arizona where non-lawyers can now legally own a law firm, and you and I decide to buy an estate planning law firm or PI law firm, anything.
Yep.
And we,
Yep.
we know how to grow businesses. You and I both, you started, I believe, your first business something like circa 2001 or got into SEO game in 2001.
That's right.
I've been an owner operator also since December of 2001. So we have combined almost 50 years of experience operating
Wow.
businesses. So
Mm-hmm.
like we're going to crank this thing up. And in 3 years or less, we're going to go from zero to, let's say, $10 million in revenue.
Okay.
And you're in charge of planning this. And you'll tell me what to do. And I'm going to lead execution.
Yep.
What's
Yeah.
our plan? How do
Yeah.
we do this?
So there's a couple of different paths, right? If let's just say we're personal injury lawyers, right? Am I a really good trial lawyer, right? Or do we have somebody? Maybe
Well,
you're the good trial
we're,
lawyer,
we're,
right?
we're business guys. We're not lawyers. We're
Okay,
just
we're
business
business
people.
guys.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Well, then that's a different path,
Yeah.
right? I was going to say if we're good trial lawyers, right, then that's a little bit easier because you don't need a lot of cases, right? You just go to somebody and you're like, I'm a brain injury specialist and refer me all your brain injury cases, right? Okay, so if we're business people, that's kind of different, right? So I would say, for one, we need to, we don't have a lot of money, right? It's like new, I'm imagining, right? So the first thing that we need to do is focus on how do we spend $1, right? I always break this out into marketing budgets. You have like $1, $2, $3, and then you've got like a Morgan and Morgan that might be spending like $5, right? And just kind of taking over the world. But we're still kind of on $1. And so with $1, that's really building a lot of relationships, right? So going out and finding other attorneys that might have overflow. They might not have good systems and processes, having a lot of lunches, meeting with doctors, meeting with chiropractors, right? Just really going out and kind of building a network first, right? So that they can start feeding you referrals, right? Because most of the digital marketing strategies are either expensive or not immediate, right? So That'd be the first thing I do. And so that's going to kind of happen as we start to get some cases in the pipeline, and those cases start to settle, and we start to generate some revenue. At that point, like, I'm going to start to reinvest. I'm going to start putting money into building out a website. I'm going to start publishing content on the website. I'm going to make videos. I'm going to, just get whatever gets scheduled gets done. Right. And so every single month, we're going to put out 25 new pages of content that's going to follow a good strategy to, to start, potentially feeding that Google engine, which, by the way, is also the same thing that a lot of these new chatbots use, right? In terms of like when you ask questions to ChatGPT, right? That's the stuff, though, all the time and money and energy that we put in today. If it's a brand new website, you might not see the return on that until another like 18 months later, right? In terms of like SEO, right? And I'm just kind of being realistic. In the background, we're also going to start doing some paid marketing as well, right? Because that's more immediate. If we put some money into a PPC campaign with Google and we're not going after the super expensive keywords like truck accident lawyer, car accident lawyer, maybe we start to go after stuff that's a little different, right? Maybe we start to go after premises liability cases where people slipped and fall at a Trader Joe's, or they slipped and fell at a Walmart or a Home Depot, right? So we're putting campaigns in place to kind of go after where the big boys are not necessarily looking, right? We're starting to generate cases, and our pipeline is continuing to grow. Eventually, we now have a nice pipeline of cases. Then we can go out to a non-traditional bank and see if we can actually get a line of credit, right? So that we can now take this to $2, right? And so we go out, we get, I don't know, maybe like a $2 million line of credit, because we see that there's a lot of, cases that are in our pipeline that have value, not immediate value, but, over time. And so now we got $2 million, and then we can kind of start to ramp things up a bit more. And maybe we do some paid social media, and we do video campaigns, and we're doing YouTube campaigns, and you're building a podcast and you're interviewing other lawyers, and now every new lawyer you interview, it's building a new relationship so that they can refer us cases, right? It's like, and eventually, now you're starting to generate more. You have to put in a good team. You have to put systems and processes in place. You have to build culture, right? Along the way, that's the other side of this, is building not just the marketing, but building the business as well, which is just as complicated as the marketing, right? And then making sure our intake is right and we're not like losing money, with a leaky bucket in there. And then from there, then you just start to grow, right? You start to do some billboards. You might do some TV advertising. You might do radio, right? Then you get to $3, where maybe you're going into a different state now, right? Maybe you're kind of moving into a different state. Anyway, so it just kind of continues to grow. In fact, I think I wrote an article about this on National Law Review about what is it you can do, to generate 300 cases per month. And so there's an article about that on National Law Review.
Yeah, that's awesome. You clearly think like a marketer, which makes sense
Mm-hmm.
because to grow a business, and this is, I think, a lot of law firm owners, because they specialize in law, it's hard for them to really focus on marketing as the main growth engine. They start thinking about processes, right? Process is the comfort zone. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
improve this process and that process because we may not be ready to take on more cases. But you, as a marketer, you, as a business executive who has grown a substantial team with very substantial revenue, you think differently. You think growth comes from marketing, and we can build other things as we're building out marketing because marketing will take some time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which just makes so much more sense, so much sense. And I also, like, as an operator, I always think about marketing as one of our revenue impact zones. I call them RITs, right? So
Mm-hmm.
marketing, you have to get it right, takes time. Intake, you have to get it right while you're working in marketing, because otherwise marketing is really expensive per case
Mm-hmm.
acquired.
Mm-hmm.
Operations is usually the easiest to get right because you're lawyers, right? You know how to practice law. This is your operations. And then
Sure.
HR and culture, right? You touched on HR and culture, which is super
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Also very hard to build right if you hire wrong people. So you have to like figure out the HR puzzle correctly. And then
Mm-hmm.
final leadership. And I say final leadership, although it all comes from leadership. So I always think of an org chart as inverted org chart, leadership at the bottom, and then
Mm-hmm.
everything just goes up like this. So when I
Yeah.
think about growing a business, it has to be like holistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marketing will drive everything else, but everything else has to be built out at the same time. With this process, we could probably do get to a pipeline that's $10 million or so within
Mm-hmm.
3 years.
What will you get to that pipeline? I think it really it comes down to the level of effort that you put into things, right? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I always like to say that, action creates results, right? And if in order to create a life that wasn't going to exist, like you have to take action, right? Like, and that starts from when you're younger and you see a pretty girl in the mall, right? You're very scared to go talk to her, right? But if you take action and you go talk to her, guess what? You're creating a future that was not going to exist, right? You didn't have a chance with this girl if you didn't approach her, right? And so by me taking action and having courage and knowing that there's a very good chance I'm going to get rejected, right? But I'm going to go take the action anyway. I go talk to her. She gives me her number. I think that was a thing back in the day when we were out. Now it's all Snapchats and stuff, whatever, right? Next thing you know, who knows? Maybe that girl, she becomes my girlfriend. Maybe she becomes my wife. Maybe we have kids together. Maybe that was my destiny. That was my future, right? But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't take action, right? And that is the same for a business, right? I wake up every morning with that mentality that I need to take action today. What am I doing? What is the action that I could take to take my business and my personal life to the next level, right? And with that mentality, nothing can stop you.
Some courage is definitely part of the winning formula.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, is that how you met your wife?
Believe it or not, that I was just got back from the Air Force. I was probably in the best shape of my life.
Thank
I
you for your
went
service, sir.
shopping. Yes, thank
Didn't know
you.
that about you.
And I went to the mall. I was going to the Oscar De La Hoya fight, and so I needed new shoes for a suit I was going to wear. And so when I went into this shoe store, my wife was there, and or this girl, this pretty girl was there, I guess. And so I wasn't going there to meet my wife. I think that was more fate. And so she asked me for my cell phone number. So she was the one that had the courage. And then I didn't have a cell phone, and so I gave her my beeper number.
Ah,
And
what
then
what year is this?
Oh, this was
Has to be the 90s.
1999,
Got it. Got it.
1999. Yep. And so I gave her my beeper number because I didn't have a cell phone. And then, lo and behold, like that next day, I got a beep, and it was a number that was unfamiliar. And I called it back, and it was her. So believe it or not, she was the one that had the courage, and she took action, not me in that case.
So you learned a little bit from your wife there.
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Hmm.
this is 99, so 26 years ago.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That
Hmm.
that's incredible. Would you also, so this career that now spans almost quarter of a century, um, would you also think that most people do not take enough action? Like everybody takes some action,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
not enough action.
I'll tell you why. Um, so I fire and then I aim, right? A lot of people take a lot of time to just aim, right? They want to make sure they've got everything perfect. They want to like analyze their decision. They want to rethink their decision. They want to go get advice from other people who's going to talk them out of doing things, right? So I think that's really where people freeze
Hmm. Hmm.
is over analyzing things, right? And I think that's the reason why like a lot of C students are grow up to be very successful entrepreneurs because C students are the ones that are just moving things quickly. I can't figure this out. Oh my God, I didn't cram for this test. I'm going to fail. Like, let me see if I could peek over the shoulder of like whoever's sitting next to me that I know is really smart. Right. Like they're just kind of moving at a different frequency. Right. Whereas the person that like studied in school, got great grades, went to a good college, got an MBA, like they're very process oriented, right? They think about things, they analyze things, right? Whereas like I just wake up and I just take action, right? I'm just like, I'm not going to get everything perfect, right? And so, but if, over time, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. I'm going to learn from the mistakes and I don't make the same mistakes twice, right? That's a big thing that I try to live my life with. But the lessons that you make are all part of the journey and the failures are all part of the journey. And so, that's just it. Just don't overthink. Just take action in some cases. Just do it.
Yeah. I also think throughout my businesses, it always took substantially more actions, more effort, more budget
Mm-hmm.
to get what I was after than I thought it would.
Mm-hmm.
Like every year I set my goals, and every year I expect them to take about 2 to 3 times longer than I expect them to take. But I usually
Mm-hmm.
overshoot them. But
Yes,
it takes a shit ton of time more.
it does. Yeah.
Just does.
Mm-hmm. That's it. It's setting goals is important. I never did that until I brought in my COO and my CFO. My journey is like we just ended up where we ended up at the end of the year, right? Up until we were about maybe $4 million in revenue. I don't know how the heck we got there. We just got there, right? They came in, they're like, nope, in order to get to 10 million, we've got to do this. And then, once we get to this level, we got to hire these three people. Like they put structure in place, right? And that's really it. Like an entrepreneur or, is somebody that doesn't really have that formal structure, right? And I think you can be a danger to yourself and really impede your growth, right? Trying to take a business all the way to, substantial revenue because you probably don't have the skills to do that, right? Sometimes I think one of the best things that a law firm could do is bring in like a COO that doesn't have law firm experience, right? Somebody that just has real business experience to come in and actually then could put better systems and processes in place and look at things from a different perspective. We're starting to see that a lot in the legal world. Like most of the successful law firms that you see on TV and speaking at the conferences, a lot of times like they have like a COO that is like the primary driver of a lot of that success, and they're just the face of the business. They've got them to the point where they can afford some of the best COOs in the country, right? But for the most part, they're the ones that are kind of like driving the actual spaceship, right? And and then it's just the owner of the firm that you see on the billboards and on TV and stuff like that.
Yeah, that is an incredibly important point. You will find that most successful businesses have a chief operating officer, not necessarily chief executive officer, but chief
Mm-hmm.
operating officer, CEO, who
Yep.
comes from a very different background
Mm-hmm.
than your current business. Sometimes
Yeah.
you can go too far out and they'll come in and they have no relevant experience and they'll damage your business. But more
Mm-hmm.
often than not, especially when it comes to small businesses, like most law firms are sub 5 million, many are between 5 and 10 million. It's hard to break those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're small. You're not going to make a decision that's going to just wipe you out. It's
Mm-hmm.
highly unlikely to happen. So bring in someone who has a different experience, who comes from a different background, but preferably still a service business, because that's helpful because you could translate or transfer experience from another service business into legal business and actually make it better faster. I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
Yeah. No,
The
I think. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Good.
No, I was just gonna say. I think you get to a point where like most people can't afford good COOs because they're not cheap, right? And so that's a pretty big investment when you're bringing somebody in that you're gonna have to pay $250,000 or more a year, right? Like, so sometimes people just can't stomach that, and so in the absence of that, you just kind of start to build it without it. And then, but you get to a point where it's just obvious that you need it. So,
Yeah, I find that people like that. If you have some other things in place. So let me preface this by saying that if your marketing produces an inflow of leads,
hmm
and you can see yourself growing with the right CEO, you will grow a lot faster. So it is an investment, and the right CEO will be absolutely free for you. I say free meaning like a good employee is free, they pay for
hmm
themselves, and a really good one will be free because they multiply whatever it is that you pay them. The
yes.
impact that they bring in is multiples, and a good CEO or CEO rather could be such a huge multiple. There's a story that emphasizes or illustrates this point really well. You know, a
Huh.
few years back, Starbucks was looking for a new CEO, not CEO, CEO.
Okay.
They hired a top consultant from McKinsey.
Okay.
Within 18 months, their stock value or the market cap valuation of the whole company takes a nosedive. They lose something like close to $40 billion
Wow.
of valuation from 117 billion, if I'm not mistaken, to
Hmm.
77 billion in 18 months. This guy had
Hmm.
no practical experience. He is a consultant, great consultant, but all he's been doing was telling people how to run their business. He's never actually operated a business.
Sure.
So they
Yeah.
bring in a guy from Chipotle, who used to be the CEO of Chipotle. And within a month of hiring that guy, stock market rewarded that decision, and they paid that CEO $113 million a year salary.
Wow.
Stock market rewarded that decision by adding $20 billion in their market cap.
See that? So it added the value right there just by making that decision. Yep.
Right, so
Hmm.
just the right person at the helm of your vehicle, whatever vehicle you're driving, right? Be it a $5 million law firm or $100 billion coffee shop chain,
That's
having
right.
the right person driving that vehicle can make a
Hmm.
huge. And by the way, obviously, that former CEO of Chipotle has added a ton of revenue and
Hmm.
significantly boosted profitability. So it wasn't just the market cap that improved with him, with the firm, the board of directors hiring him, but it
Sure.
was like an overall very positive impact on the business. So I
That's
believe
awesome.
that, but I also will call myself out on this because we're a sizable team. We have 93, 94 employees as of today,
Okay.
and we do not have a formal CEO. We just
Hmm.
never hired one. So perhaps you gave me something to think about.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is important.
Yeah.
Where do you see your businesses going in the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah. So I think in order to get to the next level, we can continue to grow. Like I've always bootstrapped my business. So I turn a dollar into two and two into three and three into 10, right? So I think in order to kind of get to the next level, there could be some consolidation potentially in my business, whether I acquire other agencies, whether I raise more capital, because I've got a lot of ideas that I want to bring to life through innovation. But I don't always have the resources to deploy all of the ideas,
Yep.
right? And so that's probably what will come around the corner in the next 5 years is, maybe raising some capital to really start to accelerate the business and take it from 20 million to 100 million a lot faster.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's I think for a lot of folks who are listening or watching this episode, when you said your $3, your marketing $3, you go
Hmm.
to a non-traditional bank and you get a $2 million line of credit. I
Hmm.
think some of the hearts have like skipped a beat when you said that.
Hmm.
It is a very scary proposition for people who may have spent $300,000, $400,000 in today's dollars on their education to
Yeah.
think about borrowing money and investing it into growing business.
Yeah. It's at the time value of money, right? I mean, that's just it. You're going to pay interest on that, but if you have a plan that is working, and you've got a team that can kind of support the plan, and the only constraint is more capital, right? I mean, that's a pretty easy problem to solve. But you just have to be careful, right? Because if you don't manage it correctly, it's very easy to spend money and then not really continue to drive the performance of the law firm, right? So you do have to be very careful with that. Like I say that with an asterisk, right? Like it's a viable opportunity, but I've seen horror stories too. I've seen law firms that got over their heads. Some of the most successful lawyers, right? Are heavily in debt. Like there's definitely some stories like that. So you do have to be careful, right? Because as Biggie Smalls likes to say, right? More money, more problems, right?
I don't necessarily agree with Bigot with that specific line. I think more money actually equals fewer problems that you're
Mm-hmm.
personally handling.
That's
That's
true.
and
Yep,
that's
that's
why
a
like
fair
my
point.
thinking is that better business is better life in part because with better business you have more money that will help you outsource or delegate solving so many other problems that you can't do it when you're operating $1 million business.
That's true.
The money is just not there. So I found that it's infinitely easier to operate a $10 million business than it is to operate $1 million business.
Oh, 100%.
It is
Oh,
much more than 5 times more profitable to operate a $5 million business, more profitable. Like you're going to make more than 5 times more if you
yes.
operate a $5 million law firm versus $1 million law firm. So for
Growing from zero, yeah, growing from 0 to 10 million was like hard, right?
yep,
Growing from 10 million to 20 million was easy,
yeah,
right? I mean, like that's the truth. It's because I had the resources to delegate everything that I did to
yeah,
other people that are smarter than me, right?
yeah,
And they just
yeah,
kind of accelerated the business. Me and my wife went to Asia for like 36 days, and I rarely even checked my email. And I
yeah.
came back and my business had grown, by so much percentage of revenue while I was gone, and I didn't do it. Like I've got a trained team that did it.
Yeah. Better business, better life. I
Mm-hmm.
always think that magic happens somewhere around $10 million threshold
Mm-hmm.
because at about $10 million, maybe even sooner, but definitely at $10 million, you, the business owner, can delegate everything that you do not want to do,
Mm-hmm.
including management of your company, if
That's right.
you know how to hire the right person to manage the company.
That's right.
And that's a
Yep.
big if.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Our my partners and my advisor approached. We had a meeting a few weeks ago, and he asked us about 2024 performance. We are recording this April 2025,
Yep.
and he asked us about previous year performance as we have wrapped up our books, and he asked us like, how much do you still love this business? My partner
Mm-hmm.
founded the company in 2008. I bought into an existing business in 2018. And he's like, so many years later, do you still love it? And we're like, not everything, but a lot of things that we do, we still love it. He's like,
Sure.
what would happen if you just walk away, if you hire a CEO and that guy would be responsible for growing your business? Like, what would happen
Mm.
to your personal finances? And like, nothing really.
Mm-hmm.
Like the lifestyle wouldn't change at all. And
Yeah.
it's like you got to think about like how much you still love what you do to decide whether you want to continue doing this every day because you guys are at the stage where you can afford to replace yourselves, both of you, with somebody else who may actually do a better job. So you better
Sure.
love this hard enough to continue operating. It made us pause because we never thought about that,
No,
but it definitely made
it's
us
a fair
pause.
it's a fair point. Yep. There could be somebody that has more experience than you. Like, this has been a journey getting a business to 20 million, right? But there's probably somebody that has the experience of taking a business from 20 million to 100 million. And then there's somebody else that has the experience of going from 100 million to 1 billion, right?
Yep.
It's just different skill sets, it's different experiences, right? And so as you grow, you have the budget to be able to afford to bring people in
Yeah.
to take that to the next level.
Yeah. And another point about that level where you can afford to bring in those people, you may have enough money to bring in those people, but you may not have enough time to get there yourself. It's a
Exactly.
shortcut. It is just such a
Hmm.
shortcut bringing in the right people who will help you grow because they've been there and done that. And they could do it instead of you taking 20 years to get there. They could do it in 3 or 4 or 5.
Exactly. Yep.
Huge shortcut. Jason, this was a lot of fun. Really great conversation. Really appreciate you, man.
No, I'm honored, man. I always love talking about this, and hopefully somebody's listening, got some inspiration, and guess what? We'll go take some action, right? So,
There you go. And one of the actions that you can take as you wrap up listening or watching this episode, go to jasonhennessey.com. There's a lot of great resources for business owners. Not all of them are directed at law firm owners. In fact, I think that a lot of it is industry agnostic. But this is
mhm.
where you can actually do a lot of learning, just like looking outside of the industry and just listen to great business advice because there is so much of it is there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the interview, my friend.
Yeah, my pleasure. Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you.